According to new information, we could be less than a year away from global food riots. Complex system theorists in Cambridge are saying that we are about 1 year or less away from global food riots. In 2011, Complex Systems Institute created a study that shows why unrest hit in 2008 and 2011. Now, they said because global food prices. Well, their model identified a precise threshold for global food prices that, if breached, would lead to worldwide unrest. Now, the MIT Technology Review explains how CSI's model actually works. The evidence comes from two sources. The first is data gathered by the United Nations that plots the price of food against time, the so-called Food Price Index of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. The second is the date of riots around the world, whatever their cause. Now, when we plot this data, this is what it looks like. Pretty simple. Black dots are the food prices, red lines the riots. In other words, whenever the UN's Food Price Index, which measures the monthly change in price of a basket of food commodities, it climbs above 2010, the conditions ripen for social unrest around the world. CSI doesn't claim that any breach of the 210 immediately leads to riots, obviously. Just that the probability that riots will erupt grows much greater. For billions of people around the world, food comprises up to 80% of routine expenses. For rich world people like you and I, it's about 15%. So you can imagine how exacerbating a social situation this would be. When prices jump, people can't afford anything else, or even food itself. And if you can't eat, or worse, your family can't eat, you fight. Oh, you can definitely see how people would be angry that they couldn't eat, especially if, like in the third world, and to a large degree the developing world as well, food was 80% of your income. You actually spend 80% of your income on eating, and a small price increase at 80% of your income, yeah, that would cause a great deal of tension for you. It would massively increase the possibility of starvation. So you can imagine why these would actually cause riots around the world. The question arises, exactly how accurate is this model? On December 13, 2010, they submitted a report on the consequences of food for the global collapse of capitalism, being the time when these happened. 4 days later, Mohamed Bouazizi set himself on fire in Tunisia, sparking the beginning of the Arab Spring. Now, this is, of course, just anecdotal evidence, but it is very telling anecdotal evidence. Today, the food price index hovers around 213, which is just beyond the riot threshold, which means we could be facing something very similar to that soon. Not at this moment, but it wouldn't take much at this point to spark something like that, particularly if it actually got worse. One of the reasons why this got so bad was because of the low yield of corn in the United States, which is one of the largest producers of corn, one of the most important producers of corn in the entire world. And the low yield, because of the heat wave, has kept the prices high. Recent droughts in the Midwestern United States threaten to cause a global catastrophe. When people are unable to feed themselves and their families, widespread social disruption occurs. We are on the verge of another crisis, the third in 5 years, and likely to be the worst yet, capable of causing new food riots and turmoil on par with the Arab Spring. Now, that study that was put through in 2011 shows that they predict that the next great breach would occur in August 2013. So as of the uploading of this video, that's only a few months away. And the risk of this spreading worldwide, this rioting, is even greater. Recently, a drought hit the United States. I believe it was just last year, where it hit 60% of the United States, and it was a great heat. It was a great heat wave where now cattle dying has become a norm. Like, the heat waves are killing cattle as well. Now, just 2 years ago, heat waves in Russia killed, just absolutely devastated their grain yield. And that dealt a devastating blow to the world food markets. And as a result, Vladimir Putin ordered opening up their reserves from grain silos to try to take care of the situation, which is another reason why storing extra like this is a really good idea, because the devastation caused by it could have been a great deal worse. Now, Oxfam is predicting that the price of corn could double in the next 20 years if it goes according to the 2010 trend. Now, a lot of this, the problem that we're facing right now is due to global warming, climate change. And this is what's causing a lot of these crops to die. These recent heat waves that destroyed grain in Russia and devastated the United States, affecting 60% of the United States. I mean, that's a huge percentage. This does all have to do with capitalism. I mean, we have the data over and over again proving global warming to be a problem that is costing people lives. It is destroying businesses, ruining economies, and devastating food supply. Yet those same people who are largely responsible for the production of the pollution that causes the problem, industrial pollution, are the ones fighting against any legislation to actually take care of the problem, which is the greenhouse gases, which is pollution going in the environment. It is the profit motive of these individuals to not want to change anything that is pushing against this. How many times do we have a Republican go up and say there's no such thing as global warming and find that the guy is completely in the back pocket of big business, particularly oil, which is a huge, massive contributor to the situation that we have over and over again. It doesn't even matter, like, Republican or Democrat. Both of them completely sell out. It's just that Republicans sell out much more than Democrats actually do, at least on this issue. It's the profit motive alone that is making any kind of a transition actually possible. When we see societies who operate less on a profit motive, like particularly Western Europe, they do switch to alternative energies much more easily. Canada, we hear it's less of a profit motive driven system. We do have a lot of state regulation on things. It is easier for us to make that transition, although our new conservative prime minister is making it much more difficult, if not outright putting a bullet in the head of anything that would actually help fight this situation. Another lot of the problem is food getting out to people. The distribution of food is crippled by the fact that, well, if you don't have money to buy food, you're not going to get food because food isn't a right. Because if you made food a right, that would interfere with the business model of food production itself. You would be entitled to take food. And it would harm the economy when it comes to food by making it a right. So business itself, the global capitalist production of food, is the problem, at least in this situation in terms of distribution. If you're poor, you have no money, you can't buy food, you die. That's it for you. If you're rich, you can just be as wasteful as hell. It was a couple of days ago, I uploaded a video showing that at least about half the food in the first world is actually wasted by just stupid things like finicky customers, or its presentation wasn't good enough. We already have more than enough food to feed everybody in the entire world, but it doesn't get to the about 2 billion people that are either starving or are food insecure because of bloody market mechanisms. Market mechanisms that can't get the food to them. I mean, that's a huge percentage. I believe it's like a third of food that's produced in India doesn't actually get to customers because of the ridiculous distribution system that they have, because it's done by a market. And we have food being wasted just because a business or even customers just don't like the look of it. It's not as presentable as it could be. So we have massive amounts of food being wasted while there are 2 billion people who are food insecure. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is completely the fault of capitalism. If it's not the market mechanism standing in the way of distribution to the poor, then it's the market mechanism in the first world just bloody well wasting it because it doesn't look perfect enough for them, because it's not up to first world arrogant bourgeois standards. And that even goes for the working class in the first world. If it doesn't look up to the very best, then someone is going to go with one of our competitors. Thus the food actually gets wasted. Well, if it doesn't look as pristine as possible, we can't compete in that market and the food gets wasted, and that's just absolutely ridiculous. And now another reason that makes this even worse is exploitation by food speculators. Well, we think it's going to go like this, And then the market automatically changes according to it because the market is based on a theoretical perception of anything, which doesn't even have to correspond to reality. People don't have to actually know what it is that's happening. They just have to believe something is happening, and that in turn affects the market, which is one of the most ridiculous things about the market. The perception of the market and the perception of what it's doing has more of an effect than what it's actually doing, and that's just absolutely insane. This is all entirely caused by capitalism itself. The market mechanism, distribution, first world waste, and exploitation by food speculators. But this is all capitalism. Because people choose not to buy this one thing because this egg is slightly misshapen, even though it's perfectly good. But the competitor has one that looks perfect, so we obviously can't even put this oblong one that is actually okay to eat because it doesn't fit a finicky first world perception of what food should look like. Now this shows that hunger is coming. You know, and so are the riots. As this gets worse, and this is going to get worse because global warming is going to make this worse. Food is going to become more scarce. We'll probably see less of it being wasted in the first world, but the global supply of food is going to get smaller, even though we have more than enough to feed everybody right now. This lack of food may actually be the catalyst that actually brings the end of capitalism. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people in the third world don't see these videos, but how do you think people in the third world who don't get enough food are going to react when now they have no food? And when they see that there is enough food in the world to feed everybody, and they're not getting it because of the ridiculousness of the market, because of capitalism itself, they're going to react very violently to that when they understand that a lot of the reason that they're not getting food is because of the capitalist system itself. And this is one of those things that tends to make me think that the LLCO, the Maoist third worldists, are very much right when it comes to a global class contradiction, that the third world will force socialism on the first world. That is what they are going to have to do. If this situation gets worse and they know there's food being wasted while they're going hungry, they are going to force an equitable distribution to themselves so they can survive. Nothing is going to make a man more violent than not being able to eat and not being able to feed his family. And when they see this waste, they are going to force rationing on us, whether we like it or not, in order for them to just to survive. This aspect of socialism is going to be forced on us because of that. And this data does certainly show that, at least in this regard, third worldists, communist third worldists are right in their theory, at least according to that. So we do have to understand that hunger is coming, and it's going to be relatively easy for us in the first world. Well, not so much easy for those of us in the working class, but the first world is going to have it really easy compared to what's coming in the third world for global food prices. And it is going to cause riots. I don't see any way that it's not going to cause them.
无产阶级，我们的力，北京20号，就是我